Are you looking for a practical little electric vehicle with excellent range? Well, today I have the 2020 Chevrolet Bolt, and it has more range than last year, and it's a practical little electric vehicle that could be a good option for you. We're going to take a full look at the exterior, the interior, cargo space, talk about the charging, and go for a test drive. Let's get started. Now, to start things off, under the hood and under the vehicle is where the magic happens. So this is completely electric. There's no gas engine. It has a 66 kilowatt hour battery at the base of the car. And now for 2020, the Chevy Bolt actually gets almost 10% more range. It is now rated at 259 miles of range. That's pretty good. That's technically considered more of a long-range EV. Since it's not like your typical miles per gallon efficiency with a gas engine, the government gives it a different rating, and it gets a 118 mpg-E. So you can compare that to other electric cars. Under the hood, you don't get a front trunk like you do in some others. We actually get some of our components under here, and this is front-wheel drive only with a front-wheel drive motor. There's no rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. But this is very peppy, 200 horsepower, 266 pound-feet of torque, and it propels the car from 0 to 60 in about 6.5 seconds. And we'll talk about that in the test drive and just how well this drives. Obviously, since this is an EV, you don't have a fuel tank. You have a little charging door right here to where you can actually charge a couple of different ways. You have a 120 volt, 240 volt, or DC fast charging option, depending. And you can charge the 120 volt in your house or in your garage in a standard 3-prong outlet. I would definitely recommend investing in a home unit for a 240 volt plug-in, because then you can charge the vehicle a full range in about 10 hours. The only thing though, in order to get the DC fast charging, which is where you can supercharge and fast charge at different charging stations, it's a $750 option for both the LT and the Premier. And the coolest thing is that when you start charging it on the inside of the vehicle, it'll show you the estimated time of when it will be charged. And with this EV, you have an 8-year, 100,000 mile battery warranty. All right, y'all, as we take a look at the exterior details of this 2020 Chevy Bolt, we have the Premier model here. Like I said, there are 2 trim levels. And as we take a look up front, you'll notice that there's really no grille and there's no need for it. You don't have the same cooling type mechanism or the engine like you do in a normal vehicle. So right up front, we have daytime running lights. Got this LED signature light that runs under the headlight, and then you have HID headlights instead of LED headlights. Then you've got that incandescent turn signal below, and at night these headlights do okay. They get an acceptable rating from the IIHS, which is the second best rating, and they're definitely distinctive with that light underneath the headlight. This color on the Bolt is a premium option. It's the Cajun Red tint coat. It's kind of a darker type of maroonish color, and it looks pretty good on this car. I don't know if it's necessarily worth the extra premium price. As you take a look at the side body here, you will have a Bolt EV badge right there, and then there's your charging door. Like I showed you, you get 17-inch wheels no matter which Chevy Bolt that you get, but ours are a little bit different. We kind of have those painted pockets on the inside, and hopefully those are some aerodynamic wheels for this type of vehicle. There is a slight difference in the mirrors between the trim levels, so both will be heated manual folding mirrors that can be controlled power. We do have blind spot indicators in here, and then the Premier model gives you that turn signal that you see on the side. Kind of have these little chrome inserts on those door handles, and I'll show you the smart key system in a second. And dimensionally, this is 164 inches long, so it is very short. It's a very compact type of vehicle. You even get roof rails up on the top on the Premier model as well, and a very aerodynamic type of stance and underbody. And as you come around to the back, you have a pretty upright rear end. You kind of have that spoiler running off, a very unique taillight design with an LED portion in there as well. Those look pretty unique at night. Another Bolt EV badge, and the incandescent turn signal down there, which honestly I think that looks a little bit cheap, but let's go ahead and check out the cargo area. Now when we take a look at the cargo area, probably a big deal for those of you that are looking for a hatchback, small crossover type of vehicle. Now behind here, as you can see, the load floor is fairly high. There's something tricky about this that I'll show you in a second. You can fit a decent amount of stuff back here, but as it sits, this is kind of small, but it's nice to know that you do have a little cargo light. All right, so now everything's gone. As you can see, you have a removable cargo cover, and it is kind of the flimsy variety, which I kind of like. You can just bend it out of the way if you need to reach and fold those seats down. But cool thing is you have this little false cargo floor. So check that out. You can flip that up to where you can just kind of almost separate things or have it just like that. You can completely take this out, or you can have it on the bottom. And then you get a decent amount of space like that, which is nice. The whole false bottom thing is standard on the Premier and optional on the LT. One thing to note is under here, there is no spare tire. This is where I keep the charging cord. I think it works pretty well, the home charging cord, if you're gonna carry it around. But without the spare tire, it's good to know that you actually have self-sealing tires on the outside of the vehicle. So if you get a puncture in these Michelin tires, they're supposed to be able to self-seal up to 1/4 of an inch. And when you fold these seats down, you get about 56.5 cubic feet. It does make this a pretty spacious area. You can even fit a bike back here. It's just a big drop of the load floor if you have that load floor down. It seems that just about all new cars nowadays are coming with more and more driver assist features and advanced safety tech, especially electric cars. But on the Chevrolet Bolt, most of those things are optional. For example, a few things you got to pay extra for on either trim is forward collision warning with automatic emergency braking. That is not standard. A lane keeping system with departure alert is optional, not standard. And automatic high beams to automatically turn your high beams on or off at night, that's also optional. The Premier model does come standard with a few features though. You've got blind spot indicators in each mirror. You've got rear cross traffic alert for when you're backing up, and rear parking sonars. Those are optional on the LT, and any of the standard or any of the safety features you want, you can basically get optional with the driver confidence package. As you hop into the front seats of the Chevy Bolt, one thing I want you to know, if you have mobility issues, because this rides a little bit higher than most sedans, it's actually pretty easy to get into, almost like a crossover. No matter which trim level you'll get 6-way manual adjustable seats that do not have adjustable lumbar. That is my biggest disappointment. On the base LT trim, you're going to get cloth seats, but on our Premier model, we get perforated leather seats that are heated. Those are optional on the LT. There's no ventilation or memory settings, but these seats overall are fairly comfortable, and they even have some contrast stitching on them. Like I said, my only gripe is that there's no adjustable lumbar support. And at mid $45,000, I would expect at least adjustable lumbar support and maybe some power adjustments as well. But the seats can move up and down with a little pump action. I have it as low as I can go. I wish it could go a little bit lower, but at 5'9", I still have plenty of headroom, and I'm sure people around 6 foot or a little over can still fit in here. The Premier model gives you a heated leather steering wheel standard. You can get this on the LT as well as an option. Tilt and telescoping adjustment gets a decent enough range for me. As you hop inside and take a look at the interior of the Bolt, it's unique but a fairly spacious layout and definitely a lot different than conventional vehicles. There's even an ambient light that runs across the front dash on this top Premier model. So Chevrolet gives you the Smart Key system standard on every trim level, including remote start, even for an electric vehicle, which is cool. So you don't even waste any gas. And got push button start right there. Everything boots up pretty quick. It's just super quiet. To take a quick look over at the door, a couple disappointing things is that it is all hard touch plastic. So I like to rest my arm up on the top sometimes. This is kind of a cheap rubber feel with not really any padding right there. So just a little bit of disappointment. One driver's side is automatic one touch. The bottle holder is nice size, accommodates things, and you got a little extra storage bin. To the left of the steering wheel, you get your light controls for interior and exterior. Like I said, this Premier model gives us the leather-wrapped heated steering wheel. It is comfortable to hold on to as well. Got a couple little sport grips. On each side, you've got a kind of a rubber padding on the steering wheel, and I have always had questions about the durability of this with frequent pressing on them, but got the heated steering wheel button here, cruise control buttons and forward collision button right there, lane keeping button. You can use these as seeking buttons for the radio, and then this does not have adaptive cruise control, and I'll talk about that later. And then behind here, there's actually a regenerative braking pedal. So you can essentially use this as a brake. You can just hold it in and the car will automatically brake if you're not using the one pedal driving. And I'm going to show you the one pedal driving in a little bit in the test drive. Right in front of us, we get an 8-inch information display here, which is nice. There's a lot of information that can be shown on here. It is a little bit complicated to kind of get used to right away. It's very unconventional compared to your typical gauges. You use the steering wheel controls to scroll through here. So there's a couple different sub settings for each of these, and you can even change the layout. So right now we are in enhanced, go to modern, and then you can also, got back out of there, go to classic. So these are the differences. I've just kind of kept it on enhance, and it shows you a lot of good information. Aside from the door, this whole upper portion, and of course you're not going to be touching it, but it is a cheap hard plastic. Almost everything in here feels a little more cheap than the price would suggest. The design of this whole center area is rather unique, and it's a fairly spacious and open type of area. My only complaint is that the screen is pointed that way. It's slanted up. There is definitely some glare that gets on that screen at certain times. I wish it could be pointed more towards me, but it is a 10.2-inch screen. It's a really large screen, honestly, a lot bigger than almost everything that this would compete with. You have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You get this screen on both trims as well. The screen has a split view. You can go to a couple of shortcut views up here, including any energy information you want to see over there, Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, your audio, and you can have a couple of these little shortcuts up there as well. One feature that is nice is that right up here, we have this surround vision camera. So there's a couple different views that you can change through as well. This also works when you are backing up. You can see the sides of the vehicle. You can decide whether or not you have the dynamic lines. So very helpful and useful surround vision camera that's on this Premier model only. On the screen, you can change some different views. You can kind of, and I've just been sitting here filming in a few different spots, but it's kind of cool how you can see all your energy. You can program different charging settings for different times. You can see kind of the flow, which it's never really going to change. It's either going to be charging the battery or the battery is going to be powering that electric motor. But it's kind of cool how you can see that on here and control all your different charging options on here. This also comes with 4G LTE Wi-Fi, which you can see up in that corner. And this has the optional 7-speaker Bose sound system. Just below that, you have a couple of radio controls with your volume and power knob. And then you have single zone climate control, which is automatic. Pretty simple and easy to use. It is not dual zone, but it is automatic single zone. Sport, traction control, and your hazard button. And then down here, you get quite a bit of space. It's kind of a massive cubby. So as you can see, there's a little slot if you want to store a phone or something, a 12-volt power outlet. And then there's really just a bunch of space down here. So I've just kind of been throwing my wallet, my sunglasses. It's nice to have that. It's just that it's a little bit inconvenient if a driver or passenger has to actually reach down there and grab something. Bottle holders are right there. They don't have accommodation rings or anything like that. It's just basically a one size is what you get. But I haven't had any trouble fitting anything in there. You have an electronic parking brake, and then your shifter is somewhat unique. So there's a button on the side you press. You can go to neutral, all the way up and over for reverse, or back for drive. And the one pedal driving, you actually just pull it back into the L, which I will show you in the test drive. There are a couple of USB ports right here and an auxiliary port. There's a little slot for your phone, which doesn't really work for me because it holds, I have an iPhone 7 Plus. And so it is kind of a larger phone, and this just squeezes my phone to death and pushes buttons. So wireless charging is an optional feature with the infotainment package. Then as we get back to our armrest, this has a soft feel to it. It's nice because you can slide it forward and backwards. Lift it up out of the way. You have one little storage bin, and then you have a deeper storage bin right there. There are no lights or charging ports in there. You get a standard non-locking glove box. And then up above, the LT can give you an automatic dimming rearview mirror optional, but the Premier actually gives you this mirror camera. So this is actually a camera, and you can control the brightness, you can control how much it zooms in, so you can see behind you very well. I've showed you this in a couple of other vehicles. You can move it up and down. I honestly leave it on here in this camera setting all the time, so you have great visibility behind you. And then up above, you actually get LED lighting on both sides. Now as you take a look at visibility, you kind of have that window right there, which is unique, but it's overall it's just a really large front pillar. I'd rather not have that unique design. Then as we look over the back, because of the hatchback style, you definitely do get some blind spots, but we have blind spot indicators in the mirror and that rear camera mirror, which helps a lot. Now, taking a quick look at the back seat, if you look at any other vehicle that's about the same dimensions, 164 inches, the back seat is going to be pretty crammed. But that's not necessarily the case in the Bolt. I can sit behind myself at 5'9" with enough space for my knees and for my feet. I can sit up tall without my head touching. And because it's an EV, we don't have a real drivetrain through here. The floor is completely flat, and I can sit in the middle seat, have a little bit of room for my feet, and still sit up without my head touching. That's fantastic. These seats don't recline or scoot forward and backwards. On our Premier model, we get a couple of USB ports optional. There are heater ducts technically for the back seat, but there's no direct vents or AC vents anywhere that blow directly on you. So you'd have to kind of rely on the front part of the vehicle. The base LT model does not give you an armrest, but the Premier model does with a couple of cup holders. I think my biggest complaint with the back seat is that, again, at this price point, everything is really cheap back here. The door also doesn't open up very far, so loading and unloading a car seat can be a bit of a pain in the butt. But on the plus side, the Premier model gives you heated outboard seats. All right, y'all, we are getting started in the Chevrolet Bolt. Go ahead and start it up, and there's basically no noise. So that's the way it goes with these electric cars. They are very quiet. Now, in this test drive, I'm going to tell you about what it's like to live with the Chevrolet Bolt, driving it on a daily basis. Obviously, I already talked about a lot of the details on the inside and the outside, so this will be all about how it drives for the most part, and ride comfort, acceleration, handling, the drive modes. There is a sport mode, and this is surprisingly quick. There's regular. I'm going to tell you what the brakes are like because they are regenerative brakes, and I'm going to show you one pedal driving, which is a thing. So to start it out, I'm actually going to put it in one pedal driving mode. You just pull the shifter back into L, and then you're good to go. And what that does is it has the regenerative brakes basically on full stop. So they're going to capture every bit of energy available when you let off the gas. I just let off the gas, did not touch the brake, and it brings me to a stop. So you can essentially drive almost brake free, but you know, you can still use the brake, and you probably will need to use the brake. Now with a quick little acceleration in this one pedal mode. Whoa! We got a little bit of tire spin right there. And that's one thing about these electric cars, is that they have a ton of torque. So with the electric motor, unlike a gas motor, you don't have to wait for the RPMs to get up in order to get some power and torque out of it. It just goes as soon as you put the pedal down. Now, one thing I forgot to mention with the safety features is that there's no adaptive cruise control. So almost all brands now give that to you, some of them standard. But on this Chevrolet Bolt anyways, there's no adaptive radar sensing cruise control. This one does have the optional lane keeping system to where it'll help you stay in your lane and alert you depending if you have that on or off. But now, talking about ride comfort, the Chevrolet Bolt is a surprisingly compliant ride. A lot of times the shorter wheel-based short vehicles in this size of a vehicle are not always the most comfortable. But this is more comfortable than I was expecting. It does have some stiffness to it, but it's really not bad. It's certainly easy to live with. In handling, it actually handles quite well. With these electric cars, you have the battery, which is a significant amount of weight, at the very base of the car. So it lowers the center of gravity instead of having a heavy engine in the front of the car that's not that low. So that's a big plus. I'm still doing one pedal driving. I'm gonna let off the gas, and it's slowing me down, recapturing kinetic energy and helping to save on your range. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it in sport mode, regular mode and sport mode after we get around this corner. Like I said, it does handle well. The weight of the steering is good, and if I go ahead and get on it, this car gets going pretty darn quick. There is no issues merging at all. I haven't touched the brake. I'm gonna put it back in one pedal mode, and it is braking for me. Now, it's totally up to you if you wanna do that. I still haven't touched the brake. In fact, I even have to accelerate to get to this light. But there's a couple of things about that. You're gonna capture as much kinetic energy as possible. I'm gonna take it out of sport mode now. So you're going to get the best range, most likely, with that. It almost feels like you're driving with resistance when you are accelerating right away. But The other thing is, let's say in an emergency maneuver, if you had to quickly stop, the second you take your foot off the brake or off the gas to move it to the brake, that split second, the car is already going to be slowing down for you. Just food for thought with that. I'm gonna put it back in normal mode. If you do actually use the brakes like a normal car, they feel kind of soft. And the very first part of the brake that you use is going to be the regenerative function, and it's going to show you on your screen that you are capturing some energy, but the actual braking feel of the car is not my favorite. But overall, I think I'm definitely impressed with how this drives. It's a little sportier, it's a little more fun, it handles well, the weight of the steering is good, it's not too loose and sloppy, but it's not heavy and laborious to drive around. There is some wind noise and there is some road noise that gets in here. The windows are not laminated or anything. It's not a loud car considering this size of a vehicle, but considering the price, it's a little bit louder than I would want. But not to say it's loud, it's just not as quiet as I kind of expected it to be, especially since there's not a gas engine. When you're going slow, city speeds, it's very quiet. But once you get on the highway, interstate speeds, or a rougher textured road, you get a little bit more road noise in here. Ergonomically, driving this, I love this mirror camera up there. Gives you some great visibility because you don't really have the best out of these types of vehicles. But it's a very spacious and roomy type of area. As a driver, and even for passengers, the whole kind of little extra storage bin down there, it's nice to have that space, but it's a little bit unpractical, you know, if you actually have to reach down there and grab something, especially for the driver, because it's just out of the way. But it's a pretty spacious area. The screen is pointed that way, slanted a little bit. I wish it was more pointed towards me. Otherwise, small complaint. It's nice to be able to see your energy flow stuff on there, the display up here. So everything works pretty well in here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and actually brake on it, and it'll get you stopped. But like I said, the brakes just have a funny feel. Now we're gonna get on a little bit of a louder textured road so you can hear some of that road noise. And honestly, most of you probably won't even really take this out on the highway that much. It'll probably be a city car. The road noise isn't terrible, but there is some of that. So something to keep in mind. But let's go ahead and wrap things up on this test drive, and I'm gonna give you some of my closing thoughts. Now to wrap things up on this 2020 Chevrolet Bolt, it's really nice that Chevrolet gave you almost 10% more driving range. This Premier model does have a fair amount of features. It is fairly quick and a little more fun to drive than you would probably expect, but it is expensive at mid $40,000 range, not including any incentives. But when you look at the competition, it is becoming more and more competitive, and at this size of a vehicle, it is quite compact. It's pretty expensive. In my opinion, if you're gonna go for a Chevy Bolt, I would go for the LT trim because you can get the same range you do with the Premier, but at a much lower price. So what do y'all think of the Chevy Bolt? Is this something that you would consider for your next electric vehicle? Leave your comments down below. Be sure to watch some of these other videos and subscribe for weekly reviews. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.